people who say that you have to have a balanced life. I don't think there's anything that's a balance of anything. If you're a small business owner or a large business owner, there will be some things that will take less time and some things that take more time. You have to know what you want out of life. And the way I've kind of set our business up is that I determined what my life was going to be like first. I made my business fit it. And so at a certain time of day, I don't care how much money is on the other end of the phone, I turn the phones off. You got to make sure that you don't let anything take your life over, because you can have a good business and lose everything else behind it.
Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Dan Wynn, and welcome to the Financial Freedom Journal. Today, we have Anthony Griffin on the phone with us, and he's gonna share with us some of the things that he's doing. Let me give you a quick bio really quick. Anthony Griffin is the founder of Griffin Group, LLC, a commercial property investment firm located in Jackson, Mississippi. He's been investing in real estate for over 13 years and is also a licensed home builder. Anthony, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for coming on. I see you're repping the A5A in the house. So,
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
All right. Hey, so would you mind telling some of the subscribers about yourself, kind of what you're working on, what you're into right now? Just a quick background.
Okay. Well, I always get asked, how in the world did you become a home builder? And everybody's heard of Hurricane Katrina, I'm pretty sure. Well, I'm from Mississippi, so when I was working for state government, I'm an ex-government employee. And so when I was working for the state, Katrina basically destroyed all of our coastline. And the Mississippi Board of Contractors had basically an emergency call for contractors. So everybody that could go through the licensing process, the structure was a little bit less than it normally is, and I tried to get my license. But the real reason I became a contractor is because I had a fourplex that I bought, and it was the property from hell.
Oh,
everything
man
that could go wrong went wrong. And I got taken advantage of by so many contractors that knew I was green that I thought about it. After all the money I spent with them, maybe I should become a contractor so I'll understand this process.
Yeah. So you're definitely gonna have to tell us a little bit about that 4-unit from hell. It's funny you mentioned contractors. I talked to so many different investors, and everyone, when they say who they use for their team or who are the key members of their team, everyone says, hey, contractor is a key person. And I came across that firsthand as well. I had my deal from hell where I got screwed by contractors. I actually made a video about it for those of you who are listening. You can see go to my YouTube channel and you'll see the 10 tips for, to help you not get screwed over by contractors. It's worded somehow like that, but I made a video about it because I got screwed over myself. So please tell us about your 4-unit and how that went, that whole 4-unit from hell.
Well, you ever seen a property that it calls your name, but you look at it and think you should have your head examined for wanting to be involved? This one was a fourplex that somebody who was a friend of ours who kind of mentored me into getting into investing in the beginning. I don't even know why he didn't buy it, because it really, after all was said and done, it became a slam dunk property. But on the outside, it was the unit, and I'll make a visual description of it so everybody can see it in their heads. It's boarded up. It has graffiti on every side of it. And I'm talking about from top to bottom, it's covered in graffiti. And literally, whenever you buy a property, you should look inside all of the units. Even if they're boarded up, pull them open and go and look inside, because you'd be surprised what's in the ones you don't look at. Well, that's
where the dead bodies are at.
It's funny you mentioned that. It wasn't quite that bad, but it was real close. The 2 top units, and I'm not making this up, they had feces smeared on the walls, and the person who ever did it literally did it with their hand, because you could see the handprints. The 2 bottom units, after we bought the building, we pried them open, and there was so much stuff growing and moving around in this building that literally the carpet was moving.
That's disgusting.
Oh, it was horrible. It was one of those kind of things you want a tetanus shot after you open up and touch stuff. And we kept this thing 9 months. And I thought I was a little of a do-it-yourselfer, and I found out I wasn't at the time, because there was so much stuff. It was kind of like a mosquito on a fat guy. You don't know where to start. And so literally 9 months just crept on by, and we finally got to a point where we couldn't do it by ourselves anymore, so we hired some contractors. And everybody knows the story of the jackleg contractor. The guy who rides around all his tools in the back of the truck, you know, doesn't look like he ever takes anything out of his truck. And I did handshake deals. First lesson, always get a contract so you know what you're paying for. Handshake deals, paid for work that wasn't finished because I thought it was almost finished. And it was just one thing after another. And then what those guys didn't beat me out of, the neighborhood people beat me out of, because I didn't realize when I bought it, it was directly next to a crack house. So literally at 3 o'clock in the morning, the neighbor would call me and say, "Mr. Griffin, they broke in your place again."
Jeez.
And it turns out the story does have a silver lining though. One, I got my contractor's license, and I learned how to build houses and properly do construction from this thing. And I made $16,000 after it was all said and done. So it wasn't a total mess up, but it was real close to one.
Hey, so that's okay. So I got to unpack that a little bit. Well, the first thing, very first, a lot of people want to take, a lot of people are so scared to take risks. They would look at something, just like you said, they would approach a property like that and say, "There's no way, I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to do anything." But I mean, I think that you are a perfect example of how you can take something like that, take a bunch of losses on a small project, and then turn it into a big lesson learned and a big win for yourself. I think that's awesome. So you took this beat down, broken down house. You got your hands dirty, like probably disgustingly dirty. Took your lumps, learned everything, basically cut your teeth on this property. And, a lot of people want to learn exactly how to do that, but it probably cost you. I mean, how much do you think you were in that for? I can almost guarantee you less than the cost of a college tuition, huh?
Oh, look, Dan, this whole property was bought for $25,000. And we had a 4-unit that would have gotten $2,000 a month in rent. And literally, I was only in it for $65,000, including all my expenses. And somebody came along and bought it before I even rented it.
And that's what I'm talking about. Like you find something, you add value to it, and you did it, you learned, you took your lumps and you learned from a smaller project, and it cost you less than the cost of a tuition at college. I think that's phenomenal. That's a great deal. So what are some of the big things that you learned or you took away from that project that helped you, catapult to where you are now?
The biggest advice I can give your audience is know your numbers. If the numbers don't make sense, the property will never make money. And I know a lot of people who have fudged deals to make the numbers kind of fit because they just were in love with being in love with a property. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
They want to be an investor so bad that any deal would have been a good deal. And if the numbers are right, like this property was appraised for, I think, $110,000, and I bought it for $25,000. So those numbers worked all day long, and the cash flow worked all day long. If it doesn't make money, if you have to feed an investment every month, it's a bad investment, and it's probably going to stay a bad investment. But if they make money from day one, you can almost pull yourself from under it. Even if it doesn't go smoothly, you can either hold on to it and rent it and get your money back right, or you can sell it and make more than you put into it. But the best advice I can give you is if it doesn't make sense on a piece of paper, if you can't write it out on a napkin in 5 minutes, it's over your head. Leave that one alone until you find a better one. And there are a ton of them out there.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They're harder to find right now, and especially to make the numbers work. But you're 100% right, man. If the numbers don't work, then it's probably something you probably shouldn't do. So, how did you find that deal? How did you go about finding and financing that deal?
Now that one, this is one of those where the stars align, and they say the deal of the century is every Monday. This one was a family friend who went to church with us, who was an investor, and he actually turned it down, which I don't understand, because he was basically the person who gave me a formula, and I'll share the formula with you and email it to you so you can show your listeners. But he gave us a formula, basically how to just on a napkin do the numbers, and if it doesn't match in 5 minutes, this is not a good property. And he turned it down. And it just so turns out that the guy who offered me financing for it was a frat brother. And he knew that with the numbers on it that I was putting up, as opposed to buying it and fixing it up, and what it appraised for, he said, yeah, that's probably going to be a good deal. And even if I had to take it from you, the bank could still get their money back plus some.
Yeah. So I know you said you're going to email this to me, but for the guys that I can't get this out to, or the guys that are listening to this on podcast, can you give us a brief description of kind of what that calculation looks like, as far as, the 5-minute deal breakdown or the 5-minute deal analysis, if you will?
Yeah, give me just a second. I'll grab it here, and then I'll walk them through it.
You got it on the paper. just a brief, like, 3-minute, just so somebody can take some the meat and potatoes away from it.
Okay. Basically, it's saying that if a property appraises, let's say for $85,000, and after you fix it up, it's worth $125,000. Properties in the area, they rent for $500 a month, and you want to purchase it for $55,000. It's currently vacant. It's going to need $15,000 to rehab, so you'll be all in at $70,000. This is the example that I used when I wrote this up, from where my friend showed it to me. Mm-hmm. He said if your financing is at 4 units rented is $500 a month, so that's $2,000 in gross income. Your $70,000 that you're gonna finance, if you do it at 15 years for 6.5% interest, and that was high. That's like hard money interest. You'd be looking at $609.78 a month. Taxes be roughly about $125 a month, or $1,500 a year. Your insurance is about $60 a month, or $720 a year. For maintenance and vacancy, I always told me do 25%. So on this one, basically, you're taking 1 unit away from it. And that would be $500 a month. So your projected net income would be $705.22 a month. And if you didn't take any capital out of it, you could pay it off in 8 years. And so he told me, he said, if you can pay it off in 10 or less, it's probably a good investment to look at.
Nice. I definitely agree. So essentially, you find the ARV, find out, what the place is going to rent for, find out what you can buy it for, obviously. And then you calculate your expenses. I use 25% as well. I usually put 10% for, I include property management though. So I do like 10% property management, 10% vacancy, 5% repairs. And sometimes I'll throw in 3% for CapEx or something like that. For my expenses, then add up my PITI, my principal, interest, tax, and insurance, add those two together, subtract from whatever the total gross monthly rent is. And then just like you said, I calculate my cash on cash return from there and see, hey, how long is it taking me to make my money back? Right. So usually if I'm in the, 20 percentile range, then I know it's only going to take me 5 years to pay this back or get my money out of the deal, which is amazing. So yeah, I definitely agree with that scenario. That's good stuff.
It's funny you mentioned returns, because like we were talking a minute ago about people who will fudge the numbers to just make a deal work. Mm-hmm. I literally saw investors who were doing a single family house that literally only would have made $25 a month, and we're talking about a 30-year investment for $25 a month, and managing the deal themselves and everything. And
it's crazy. It's crazy you say that, because I'm a pretty big advocate. I don't believe in single family homes as an investment. I talk to a lot of people that disagree, but for that exact same reason. Like there's very, very, very little cash flow in it. And if you have one vacancy, wipes out your cash flow for a year. If you have, you know, one repair, one turnover, the same thing. So that's interesting that you say that.
Not to mention, what about the tenant you don't get along with? There's always going to be at least one of those. And you got to be frustrated by somebody for $25 coffee money.
You're right. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. I definitely agree. So that's crazy. So did the 4-unit, you learned your lessons there. It sounds like you made a decent profit on it. You turned it around, you cut your teeth on that. Then it seems like did you become a contractor right after that, or did you go into office spaces after that?
Well, I became a contractor right after that.
Okay.
But I was still a state employee at the time. So literally, when I learned how to build houses, and it was very shortly afterwards, I literally was working an 8-to-5 job. And you talk about being Superman. I would go to work at 8 o'clock, but I would be on a job site at 5 in the morning. And I'd be waiting there for the crews to show up, materials to show up so I could sign for stuff. I'd make it to work at 8 o'clock. I'd drive 20 miles to go to work. Then I'd leave my lunch hour, go back out to a job site, make sure everybody was showing up, everything was done. If I need to pay anybody, I would pay anybody. And then I'd go back to work and come back after 5 and clean up the job site and sweep up, pick up stuff. And I did this for like 5 or 6 years, every day. And my last state job, and this is the one that made me go out on my own, it was working for the bad boss. Everybody's got one of those stories too. I was doing commercial property for the state, and this is how I got into office property. My last job was I was a portfolio manager for the state of Mississippi. We had 2.5 million square feet of Class A office space that I was responsible for.
Jeez.
I drafted all their leases. I wrote their budgets. I administered the budgets, and I was over maintenance and janitorial staff. And it wasn't until I went to a meeting of commercial realtors that, you ever been invited to a meeting and when you get up and tell people who you are, you feel like you're the dummy in the room because you're not as experienced as everybody else?
Yeah, pretty much every time. Pretty much every time I go to a large investment conference. So yeah.
Well, the guy who was over it asked me to introduce myself, and I told him all of the stuff I did. And so everybody starts kind of laughing, amongst themselves. And I asked the guy who invited me, "What's funny?" And he says, "Well, man, I didn't know you had to do all of that stuff. I thought you were just doing one of those things." I said, "No, I do all of that. I'm the only person here." He said, "Well, how many people work on your team?" I said, 2 secretaries. And everybody starts laughing again. And so now I'm getting a little bit upset because I want to know what's the joke that I'm not in on. And so the guy who was the head of the meeting, his name was Rod Chamley. I'll never forget Mr. Chamley. He's deceased now. But he asked me, he said, "Son, if you don't mind me asking, how much did you get paid to do all that a year?" I said, "I made $51,000 a year." And I'm thinking that's hot stuff. And so he giggles a little bit and he says, "Do you want some advice from some people who've been on this a little bit longer than you?" I said, "Yes, sir. I would love some advice, at this point." And he said, "There's Parkway Properties, which is a REIT that used to be located in downtown Jackson. They've now moved to Florida, but they own the other half of downtown. Everything we didn't own, they own." He said, "Son, that company has a floor full of people that do a piece of what you do. They don't even do all of it." He said, "If you will just go to that job and learn everything that they'll let you learn for 3 years, you can write your own ticket in commercial property." And God has a real funny sense of humor, because 3 years to a week, my boss basically told me that he didn't want me getting up from my desk unless I went to the bathroom. And I was the comptroller. And so shortly after, I left, started buying my own property.
That is a phenomenal story. That is a phenomenal story, from the even backing up to where you were, showing how hard you were hustling, how hard you were just grinding it out to learn something, because you knew you wanted something, you knew you were working for something greater, right?
Yeah.
You talking about getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, go into a job site, checking on your contractors, making sure they're good, then going to your 9 to 5 job, break on your lunch break, going back over there. Then after you finish up your job, go back to the job site. I mean, that's amazing. And then after that, taking that advice is really good that it's really great that you actually took that advice. I see a lot of people that want to learn about the business, but they don't want to put forth the effort that they need to, as far as getting out there, networking, and kind of taking the advice that other people are giving them. And you took that advice, and now, you went and worked for a big firm, and, kind of that, I don't know. I thought that was really good. That's a great story. Excellent story.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So you did that, then you shortly went off on your own and you started buying properties right after that. What kind of properties were you buying from there?
Well, since I've been on my own, we own a residential and commercial roofing business now, which is, we've taken our home building company and we've narrowed it down to a market that doesn't go away when the economy goes away. And as everybody knows, in 2008, most home builders almost went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so it's easier for me to find a roof that needs to be done than it is for a house that needs to be built. So that's one reason we've scaled that back. And since I've been on my own, we bought office property because I had a knack for it, because that's what I did. But we're starting to scale back from office, and we're looking for multifamily property. And I'll explain the reason why. When you own an office building, the cap rate on them is awesome. The cash flow on them is awesome compared to what you have to spend if you get a good deal. The only problem is, if you have a tenant that goes dark, they decide to move, they go out of business, whatever the case may be, offices are a lot harder to rent to somebody else, because one company might not need as much space, they might need more space, they may not like how the property is laid out. They're a lot more picky than, say, a person looking for an apartment.
They might need building specifications and stuff too, right? They might need like a build out or something.
Yeah, and see, build outs, I've been fortunate enough that I've lowered my rent a little bit so the tenants would do their own build out. And I hadn't had to pay for build outs, because like my last tenant, they're a national nonprofit that does mortgage lending. They pay $15,000 to have their unit built out. I just had a tenant recently in another property that spent $9,000 for a build out, and that would have come out of my cash flow had I had to do it. The difference with multifamily, though, is as long as you keep a property clean and safe, there's always somebody that needs it.
Yeah, true. Definitely true. So so you got an office space because you were already familiar with that market, right? What did the first couple office spaces look like, as far as what you the type of properties that you bought, and how did you finance those, and like how did you come across those actually?
Okay. First of all, my investment strategy has always been value add. Whether it's been the fourplex that we started with, or any other property, office, or a little house that we may have bought and gotten rid of, everything we've ever bought has been value add. And what that means is, you're looking for a property that's either suffering from neglect, where you may need some repairs done to it. The management may not be managing it well. You got a lot of vacancies, bad leases, rent's not high enough. That's what you call a value add property. And basically, the whole point is to come in and add value on top of what it's already looking like. So every property we've bought has been something that was mismanaged, and it needed repairs because a lot of them hadn't been updated in 20 years. And that's the good thing about having a construction company, because everything we do is at cost. So we're able to go in at the bare minimum cost to have any of those upgrades done. And being a home builder by trade, I've got access to all of the different trades that will do everything for us.
Okay. All right. So what was the first one actually? So can you describe like the first one, maybe go over some of the numbers or something like that? As
Yeah,
far
yeah.
as,
I've got one office building. This one, to me, is one of my pride and joy ones because the deal, I really worked this deal I worked it into the ground actually. Um, this is a 4,300 square foot office building. It was originally appraised, well, it was originally for sale for 250,000. It was a bank-owned repo. The bank had it for 3 years. And according to the realtor who had me come out and look at it, they literally for 3 years had not had one single person come look at it.
jeez, so that was easy for you then.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a real spiritual guy, Dan. So when somebody tells me, that there's something being held for you and it's just waiting on you to come and find it, this is one of those deals, and I'll explain why I said that. This deal had been sitting up for 3 years. Nobody would come look at it. And literally, it was a bank repo. They were a year from having to just liquidate it off the books. So that means that they were negotiating like it was on fire.
Mm.
And so I thought 250 was a good enough price. I could probably afford to get a loan for it. This is really how I came up with how I bought it. I said, that's not that expensive. Maybe I can get a bank loan for it. So I went to look at it, and it needed a roof on it, which is a flat TPO roof.
Oh
That
man.
was a $15,000 expense by itself.
Yeah.
Um, it had been leaking for 3 years.
Mm.
It only had one tenant in it. It's a two-tenant building. It had one tenant in it that actually had been there for 10 years, and they were paying all of the debt service. So it actually made money.
Wow.
And, and the funniest thing, and they were in the smallest unit. The biggest unit was the one that needed repairs. And it just basically needed somebody to go in and tear everything out and put it back clean. That's all. We did new floor, new paint. We had a drop ceiling. We replaced a bunch of it because it was water damage. And we replaced a lot of ballast in our fluorescent bulbs because they had water leaking in them. Other than that, that's all we had to do to it. And we turned around, I think it took me from buying that building, it took me about a year to get the other side leased out. But we took a building that the bank wanted 250 for, and we negotiated it down to 107,000.
Nice.
And it came with debt service already paid by the original tenant, and we still were getting about $500 cash flow with the one tenant. So when we leased the other side, it was a real positive cash flow. And this is another weird story. When I went to get this building, first thing I did is I just left the state, didn't have a job other than I was going to become a professional investor. Every bank in town told me, well, we're not going to give you the money. You don't have a job. And so I said, okay, well, prayed about it for a while. And I said, well, I need 30% down to get this building, which is about $30,000. And I said, I have no idea where I'm going to come up with this money. And something told me, well, I know what the something was, but God told me, he said, well, your retirement is sitting there waiting. And of course, if you work 20 years and you leave early, the last thing you want to do is go collect your retirement, just in case you might want to go back. So I went and looked at my retirement, and it was $60,000 sitting there. And I didn't want to go get it, but I was obedient, and I went and did it. And the lady told me, she said, well, it takes 30 days to release payment. And I said, okay, well, maybe that'll be enough to stop me from doing it. The check showed up in 7 days.
Jeez.
So I deposited in the bank. And I'm still negotiating with the bank that's got it for sale. And I went and deposited in a certain bank. Matter of fact, the one who gave me the money for the fourplex. And I put 60 grand in their bank account. And their loan officer, I wish I knew his name so I could put him on front. But he told me, he said, well, the loan committee won't give you the money. And I had 60 grand in their bank, and all I needed was 107.
Yeah.
They could have just given me $46,000.
That's an unsecured loan.
Right. It doesn't get any more secure than that. And the building was already making money.
Yeah.
So my attorney at the time, he introduced, well, I went to 7 banks and they all turned me down. And my attorney at the time told me that I got one more place I want to send you. He said, if they don't give you the money, I'll give you the money. He said, because properties like that just don't come up very often. Well, this guy gave me the money for it. And long story short, we've had that building 8 years and we are almost paid off on it.
Man.
And it's still making money.
That's excellent. That's the power of real estate. That's the power of perseverance. That's the power of grit and determination. That is an excellent story for, for those of you who are out there listening and getting turned down by a bank or two and getting frustrated and, just listen to how many hoops it took, you to jump through to accomplish that deal and how much of a stellar deal it is. Like, I mean, you're still cash flowing off of it. You own it for 8 years and you pretty much already paid. I mean, debt service was paid off of one tenant. That's crazy. That's excellent. That's excellent. So, don't lose faith for you guys out there listening. Don't lose faith.
You've ever heard the story? Have you ever heard of the story Acres of Diamonds?
Yes, I have. Who wrote that? I can't think of who wrote it.
I can't remember who wrote it, but for your audience, I want to give them this example to go with that. What you just said. There was a guy who basically he went looking for diamonds, really, and he was digging. Nothing ever came up. So out of frustration, one day he decided he was going to hang it up, and he sold all his equipment. Well, a guy who bought his equipment ended up going to get somebody to analyze the soil just to see if it really was something there or should he even fool with it. Well, long story short, they found out that it was the largest diamond deposit in the United States. And the guy was literally 5 feet to the left of where it was, but he gave up. So to all of you listening, if somebody turns you down, that's part of the business. And you got to take your lumps and you got to have a little bit of thick skin, but don't give up because the next person you ask, you just got all the no's out of the way. The yes is on the way somewhere. Just stick with it.
Phenomenal advice. That's great. Excellent. Okay, so what are you into now? I know you mentioned you're trying to get into multifamily. What type of deals are you looking for? I know you're looking for value add, but what type of what unit mix are we talking about? That what the price ranges? Are you focused on Jackson, Mississippi? Are you trying to go out to the expanding areas? What are you actually looking for any listeners out there that might be listening that might have something that that you want?
Okay. Well, because of my experience, we self-manage everything. So management's not a problem for us. We are looking for anything 5 units or better. I like Mississippi because I'm here, but 2 other markets that I have an interest in are Florida and Texas.
Any specific parts?
Just major cities.
Okay.
Texas, then we're looking at Dallas, Houston, and Austin, because I'm not familiar with a lot of the other parts. In Florida, everything's good. I'll look at anything in Florida. That's a good market regardless. And we're looking million 5 as our cap for right now. The one thing I have not done, and it's been offered to me, is syndication. And I'm not confident enough on it yet to have somebody else's money. Everything we've bought has been ours, and we've been the sole owner, and we made all the decisions on it. And I'm not confident enough yet to invest somebody else's money. But I've also been told that if you really want to grow your business, you eventually got to look at the model.
Big time, yeah. Definitely agree. That's what I'm doing as well. So I'm jumping in the syndication world as well. Very similar markets. I actually started in Jacksonville. That's where I brought my very, very first investment in Jacksonville, Florida. So yeah. I haven't looked into Dallas yet though, but that's good. That's good stuff. Okay, so you got your roofing business. You're also a real estate investor. You're also obviously buying office space, and you got a couple multifamilies and things like that. But you're also a family man. You also homeschool your kids as well. So how are you managing all this? How does this, can you give us some pointers on managing everything and being successful at everything?
Well, you've heard people who say that you have to have a balanced life. I don't think there's anything that's a balance of anything. If you're a small business owner or a large business owner, there will be some things that will take less time and some things that take more time. You have to know what you want out of life. And the way I've kind of set our business up is that I determined what my life was going to be like first. I made my business fit it. And so at a certain time of day, I don't care how much money is on the other end of the phone, I turn the phone off. I've seen that way too many times. You got to do what you want done and then make the business fit around it.
Yeah, I love that you said that. You kind of led off with that. Hey, you decided what you wanted out of your life first, and then built everything to fit that model, to fit that mold of what you wanted your life to be. And I think that's phenomenal. That deliberate planning, taking that pause for a second and really figuring out, hey, mapping out your life and figuring out how I want to live. What do I want to do with my life? And then, kind of start to execute the plan from there. So I think that's great. So for any of the listeners out there right now that want to kind of get where you're at, to kind of achieve the level of success that you've achieved, what single piece of advice would you give someone?
Go to YouTube University. I always like to tell my 17-year-old wants to join the business after he graduates from college. And I've told him that real estate is a dumb man's game. You don't have to be the brightest person to do real estate because it is what it is. The numbers tell the story, and if the numbers don't fit, it's not a good product. So I've told him that if you want to join this business, all you got to do is learn how to do the numbers. And if the numbers tell you one thing, stick with it. Never go against it because it never works out if you do.
Right. You're spot on. I've learned so much from YouTube University. For those who out there listening, check out my YouTube channel. I'm on YouTube University. I'm one of the professors there. And I pretty much teach the same thing. I go over my deal breakdowns and things. I share the numbers and, share some property walkthroughs and stuff like that I've done as well. So I think you're spot on. I've learned a lot from YouTube and listened to great people. And that's kind of why I wanted to start this, why I started the podcast and putting these interviews on YouTube for other people to continue to learn this stuff. I think this is really important, and it's really eye-opening, and it can change lives. It definitely changed lives. Learning, if you can learn from someone else's mistakes, someone else's experiences, then you don't have to go through that. That kind of puts you on the fast path to success, if you will. So I think that's right. I think you're right on.
I do have one thing I want to add to YouTube University. Don't get, let's see, what's the term I'm looking for? Don't have paralysis of analysis.
Analysis paralysis.
Yeah, don't learn, and never execute. Because you got to go out there and do this stuff too. You got to go look at properties, and you will get burned eventually. Nobody has ever had 100% success on every project. There's always one that's bitten even the best investor. But you can't learn if you never actually try anything.
You're right. You can't learn if you've never been burned.
You got to go and put this stuff into practice because I guarantee you there's always that scenario that nobody else knew about. And it happens to every one of us. We all get that different lesson. So you can't learn everything there is to learn, but you can't learn unless you go try it either.
100% right. 100% right. 100% agreed. All right, Anthony. So where can my listeners find out more about you? Where can we, if they want to get in contact with you, if they're in the Jackson area and they want to look you up, maybe take you out for lunch and kind of pick your brain or something like that, where can we get in contact with you at?
You can find me on LinkedIn under Anthony Griffin. You can find me on Facebook also. We have 2 websites. Griffin Group Construction is where I do a lot of my rental property things, and the website for our construction company is griffinconstructionandroofing.com.
Definitely, definitely. Hey, so everything you just heard there, the notes will be right here below, right below the photos, so you can, or at least that that contact information will be right here below the photos, so you can check that out. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can find the information in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously it's in the show notes and then also underneath the photo. As always, if you find value in the content we're delivering here, please subscribe to the podcast and make sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment with any questions you have, and we'll be sure to get back with you. Hey, Anthony, thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us. I really, really appreciate it. I know this is a great episode, and so many people are going to learn so much information from watching this. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Definitely, definitely. Hey, so with that said, this is Dan Wynn signing off.